The third quality that marks a good, strong, high-quality leader is the ability to pick a top team. I grew wearied last year in the presidential campaign in the United States of hearing people say, well, Obama had no executive experience. He was just a young senator. That's what they said about John F. Kennedy in 1960 and earlier. But running a national presidential campaign in the United States, like running most campaigns in your country, requires selecting a top team, people who have the skill and the qualities that are required. A good leader earns the loyalty of that team, earns it by what he says and by what he does, and he also deserves the loyalty of that team if he shows loyalty down. Loyalty down is just as important as loyalty up. And a good leader, when his people are under attack, is going to defend them and speak up for them. He's going to protect them from unfair criticism and commentary. Too many forget about loyalty down. Sometimes they lie to their subordinates, and that puts the subordinates in a very difficult position. Sometimes they blame the subordinates for actions that were actually the fault of the leader himself. So loyalty down is part of that third quality of being able to select and retain a top team. It's difficult. A new leader doesn't know all the possible people who might staff his government. People are known by reputation, and reputation is sometimes too high or too low. Few are equal to their reputation. When I spoke at the University of Western Ontario the other day, I mentioned that Kennedy in his first year, based on recommendations from others, picked Bill and Frank for mid-level positions. He didn't know either one of them before the election. By the end of Kennedy's service in the White House, Bill, from that mid-level position, had risen to be one of the best cabinet members that we ever had in the United States. Frank, also named to a mid-level position, proved to be, as I said at the university, a good peg, but a round peg in a square hole. And I apologize to my fellow members of the bar. That's how federal judges are made. Finally, and most important, a good leader must have the one quality that matters most of all in an executive position, and that's judgment. I was for Obama before the race even started in 2008 because he had shown good judgment in opposing the unilateral invasion of Iraq by the United States when there was no connection of Iraq to 9/11 or to weapons of mass destruction. And I did not feel the same way about the judgment of his opponents. Kennedy had superb judgment in picking people, in deciding policies, in knowing when to decide, in knowing when to act, in briefing allies, in deciding how much to inform allies. Good judgment. Those kinds, exercises of judgment, have to be made every day in an executive position, and that is an all-important quality that so many of a leader's critics do not have. So let me mention to you something else that every leader has that the critics do not have. The first is priorities. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the military urged Kennedy to invade Cuba, the exact words, I will remember them to this day, the exact words were, "Go in there, Mr. President, and take Castro away from Cuba and Cuba away from communism." Kennedy said, "Cuba is an irritant, but it is not a major threat to the national security of the United States." Those missiles were placed there not by the Cubans, but by the Soviet Union, which has a nuclear stockpile that's a threat to the freedom of everyone in the West. That is our priority. Since then, I visited Franklin Roosevelt's library in Hyde Park, New York, and there was a special exhibit on Roosevelt as Commander-in-Chief. And it said that Roosevelt said to his commanders, "I know you're all emotional, agitated about Japan because Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. But the main threat to Western freedom is Nazi Germany. Focus on Germany. That's our priority. We'll take care of Japan after that." It's that sense of priorities that makes a difference in a genuine and high-quality leader. Obama had to move first with the unbelievable mess that was dumped in his lap on an economic recovery. And when people say to me, "But why is he taking on so many things at once?" I say that's what a president has to do. He has to take on everything that's on his plate. And that not only includes economic recovery, it includes health care, because the United States, unlike Canada, has no national health care program, and the costs have ballooned far out of reason and control, and the fiscal problems facing the new president cannot be solved until we have a national health care program in place. Our competitiveness as a nation cannot be assured until we have a first-rate education program in place. So those are all the priorities that a leader faces that his critics are free to ignore when they want him to take up their pet subject instead.